Last part of the video, I promise, but I wanted to do a quick overview of how to properly critique an artwork, especially when you're doing one that's a little bit more substantial, not just a sentence or two on your classmates' work. So when you are doing a full critique, there's a couple things that you're going to want to keep in mind, and I tried to put them in the template for your essay just so you can kind of have a reminder. So Adriana is off today, and she's going to help me. I'm just going to hold up this little picture here. So you guys have seen, you can say hi.
Hi.
You guys have seen this painting before, which is by Miro. So some things about the painting, describing the work. So this is oil on canvas, right? The artist is Miro. It was done in Spain. A lot of times if you have a book, which is pretty cool, it has all of this information for you, right? A little bit of a glare. Let's see. I'm going to grab this. Okay, so you can see that it has the name, right? So the Potato, 1928, Metropolitan Museum of Art. It is, this is weird because it's backward, but oil on canvas. It's 32 inches by 40 inches. It actually gave a little fun fact, which is one of the reasons that I like this book. And it says that as a student, Miro began a series of sensory experiments where he would draw objects from touch instead of sight. So I thought that might be a fun prompt coming up too. So it resulted in drawings that had a really stylistic impact on his later work. So if we look at the larger version here, so the potato, right? So when we're describing it, we're not just describing those like statistical facts, but we're also describing what we see. So you want to use kind of neutral terms. And when we describe, we're talking about elements. And that's one way to break it down. So describing is more elements, where analyzing is more principles. So we could talk about exactly what we see. So obviously it's not a potato, but a lot of the forms look like them. So we could talk about the composition. It's kind of like depicts this big human form, its arms outstretched. It has a good use of colors. So the bright colors in the background create contrast, create the outline, how he uses line, how he uses the colors together. And then you want to stay away from using words like good, bad, ugly, right? So you're discussing the elements. So talk about the way the artist uses the elements of design: color, line, space, shape. And then we'd go on to analyzing. So discuss how the work uses those principles. So balance. How does the artist use balance? Contrast, right? So the contrast of this white form in the center, kind of with the pieces, the colors that it's surrounded by, create emphasis. Movement, proportion. So, and then in most pieces of art, there is something that is the emphasis. So how does the artist draw attention to that? Is it what they're trying to get across? Is it a specific part of the painting? There we go. Thank you. And you want to look at the work and kind of figure out what jumps out at you right away, right? What's the first thing you notice? That's typically what the artist intended to be that. And then you can look for any themes in the work. At the Guggenheim, there are going to be pieces that are more controversial or have more social underlying elements, things like that. So is there something they're trying to get across? And then interpreting the work. So what's the purpose of the artwork? Thank you. What's the purpose? So what were they trying to say? Why did they create the work? Kind of summarize the overall meaning as you see it. And then describe your own reaction to the work. So it's time to be a little bit more subjective. You want to avoid using the word I like it, or I think it's good, or so you want to think about how you feel. What's the overall mood? Does it remind you of anything? And you want to use expressive language. And then you want to make sure you back up your interpretation with examples. So if you say you like it, great, tell me why. Or if it reminds you, don't just say it reminds me of a summer day. What reminds you of a summer day? Are there certain elements? Are there certain things in there that bring you back to a time? Does it show movement that reminds you of waves of the ocean? And then the last thing, right, is our judging or evaluating our work. So is it successful or not? Some of you guys just put, yes, I think this artwork is successful. Why? Okay. So do you think that how is it successful, right? You're not just saying, is it good, is it bad, but like we talked about, there's going to be works that are not your favorite, but they still can be successful. So did it get across what the artist intended it to? Was there a message? Did they apply tools and techniques well? Did they use the elements and principles well? Did they create contrast and movement? Is it the artwork original, or is it kind of imitate other works that you've seen? And then tell me how you're judging the work. So if you say yes, it is successful, okay? How did you come to that conclusion? So once you decided on a few aspects to judge, what's the focus here? So you might say that you're judging the piece on how well organized it is, or how well it's done technically, or if it correctly, it's balanced really well. But that, you want to have a couple different areas that you're focusing on, and then summarize why you think it's successful. So it's just like a few sentences, one or two. Explain your judgment. Give for the summary, but give specific reasons. For example, I believe this work is successful because the use of light, shape, gesture, and line all work together harmoniously to portray the mood of the subject. Boom. Okay, so that's what you guys are doing. Make sure you check all of the links that I posted. And have a great weekend. Try to get outside.
Try to subscribe.